Well, the last couple weeks we've been talking about nutrition so you guys can live a long, healthy, beautiful life and be lean and mean. But there's one thing that you guys need to remember. In order to look really good, you need to provide your body the right stimulus to actually look a certain way. This was something I talked briefly on the call about yesterday, and I think it's part of the challenge for a reason. Is like any nutrition challenge, I think should be in combination with either step count or exercise, cardio or strength training, whatever it might be. So today what I want to talk about is kind of how to structure the best type of workout for yourself, how many times a week you should be doing, why how you do it is more important than what you're doing in some of these things, and just kind of breaking all those things down. So I'm not going to be too long today, hopefully, and just going to be short and sweet. So when you think about nutrition, a lot of us obviously like to kind of pay attention to, tracking calories or macros or getting into a diet or doing a nutrition challenge or just, paying attention to eating healthier in general for longevity reasons. Most of us do it for the reason that for the what the hell is the word I'm looking for? Whatever. For the reason of trying to be leaner, right? So like we're trying to do this so we can reduce body fat, so we can build more muscle, so we can lose weight for the majority. There is a very small percentage of people that I work with that, maybe have more performance-minded nutrition goals of like, how do I actually fuel my workouts? And these tend to be the people that are doing a lot on the fitness side of things as far as their workouts go. But for the majority of people and general population, and I have no idea who listens to this podcast or not, but we're going to talk about Gen Pop today, right? Which is basically like, I want to maximize losing fat, building muscle, and obviously maintaining a healthy weight. So, as part of the conversation like we talked about last week, it's like, yeah, in order for us to lose weight, we need to be in a caloric deficit. But when you look at a deficit, remember that there's two sides of the scale, right? There's going to be a calories in conversation, which is where majority of people spend their time, which is like, hey, I want to, eat less or drink less or whatever it might be, so I reduce my overall calorie intake. The other side of it is your total daily energy expenditure, which is basically the calories going out, right? Combination of basal metabolic rate, your thermic effect of food, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and then obviously exercise activity thermogenesis. There's this thing called G-Flux, right? Which is basically like, they kind of study the difference between like if someone was really eating high calories but burning lots of calories versus another client that would be eating little calories and burning little calories. And the results were that people that actually ate more and trained more actually had a better, more sustainable approach to actually weight loss and improvements in body composition. And for me, selfishly, and this could be my bias, I would much rather live a life less concerned about the amount of calories or food that I'm taking in versus trying to figure out, well, if I do, like, how do I become as efficient as possible where I don't really have to do much on the training or fitness or movement side, and then really be methodical about how much I'm taking in. That for me feels way more stressful of an approach than it does just like, let's just move and exercise a lot and let's eat obviously a little bit more carefree. So this kind of idea of flexible dieting has always been something that I've been attracted to because it kind of gives you a built-in quote-unquote flexibility approach, right? So when it comes to training, obviously that's the thing that we're going to talk about mainly today, but then obviously movement. Training is the thing that causes the stimulation for whatever the goal or output might be. Meaning, most people want to look good, right? And looking good comes with some type of toning or body development or body shaping, bodybuilding, whatever fancy word you want to use here. And that is only done through training and strength training, right? So a lot of times, and this is something we were talking about in our team meeting today, like a lot of clients that we have that are, at our current Palo Alto location, we have 390 members, and let's call it 350 maybe active, right? That, are here training, active memberships, the whole 9 yards. We should be doing way more sessions a week and a month than we currently are. And I always said that to the team over the last 6 months, I'm like, we have a utilization problem. We need more people coming more times. The perfect world, all my clients would be coming 3, 4, 5 times a week, right? And the reality of this is because you are always going to be more successful with your results when you're training with a class or with a coach or with a workout partner, right? As far as accountability goes, as far as your intensity goes, as far as your form goes. The people that are coming, once or twice a week to a gym and then saying they're doing a couple things outside of the gym, or the ones that are just coming once or twice a week and then taking 5, 6 days off, you're not going to see that great of results. And the hard part is your diet needs to be damn near perfect for you to even manage body composition or weight, all right? But then even then, you're not going to look that great, right? I think for me, like looking good comes from developing the body and the muscles around it, right? Shaping the legs or the butt or the shoulders or the lats. And this is why it was something I was always attracted to when I was younger, was kind of like this bodybuilding approach. Is like, we have the tools in our hand. We have the chisel and the hammer to shape our body however we want. So this idea of like hypertrophy training and training muscle for development, not just basically strength, but also size or whatever it might be. I've always been attracted to that, and that's why I think this kind of blend between performance training and aesthetics-based training has always been something that I've kind of gravitated towards. But, one thing, and this is hopefully a message for all my clients, this podcast is meant to just sell you on coming more. That's it. Like, if you just do anything from this podcast, upgrade your membership to 4 times a week, and the conversation's over. I'm just kidding. But seriously, though, the ones that are coming once or twice a week, or even the ones that are coming 3 times a week and not doing much outside the gym, like, it's just hard because you're not really getting enough input into what you want out of it, right? My favorite example is, like, imagine if I hired somebody on the team and their big goal was like, I want to make an impact and I want to make a lot of money here, but I only really want to work twice a week. Is that okay? And I'd be like, sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Like, you having the problem and the solution is both the things you complain about always is something that's grinding my gears. So a lot of people come in with these very ambitious goals, or realistic goals too, but then they come in with these unrealistic expectations on how they're planning on getting there, right? Like, I'm going to do twice a week. I want to be easy on my body. And, one thing I've noticed the last couple weeks in Mountain View, I don't know if it's the Mountain View demographic or what, but like a lot of people have come in with like a 1 time a week goal. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? Why will we only train once a week? Like, what do you think you're really going to get at once a week? And a lot of times there's a level of intimidation that comes with it, right? Like not being, confident enough in maybe your own skill set or body that you're going to be able to handle 2 or 3 times a week as workouts. But the one thing for those that are brand new is, remember, you're starting light and focusing on technique and form and consistency versus how much weight and how fast can you do these workouts. Over time, that obviously should become the conversation, but in the beginning, it's not, right? So finding a nice little balance between both of those things, I obviously think is important. But in the reality of it, it's like you need to have more days on than off is always something I've been a big believer on. When it comes to like longevity and this biohacking space, and I kind of went into the deep end in 2020, and for the last couple of years been kind of more interested in some of that stuff. A lot of the conversation for some of these guys is kind of like the minimum effective dose, right? Like, how little do I need to do to still get the result that I want? And when I look at them, when I mean aesthetically, I look at these people, I'm not attracted to that build, right? Meaning that I'm like, okay, maybe this is the best thing to try to live to 130 years old. I'd much rather live to 100 years old and look exactly the way I want to look, right? And feel exactly the way I want to feel, whatever that might be for everybody. Super subjective. And that comes from training more times a week. When you look at the highest level athletes, when you look at bodybuilders, when you look at, CrossFitters, powerlifters, Olympic lifters, they're not training 2 times a week, 3 times a week, and sometimes even 4 times a week. Most of these people are training 4 to 6 times a week. Obviously, a lot of priority on recovery side of thing, the more kind of higher up you go as far as performance and training intensity goes. But that's always one thing that kind of, grinded my gears inside the gym, when people like expect a really realistic goal, but then they give themselves a very unrealistic plan to get there, right? Twice a week is a great way to start. Twice a week is a great way to maintain. 3 times a week is kind of a sweet spot for most, but ideally everyone should be working towards getting into the gym 4 times a week. In my perfect world, that's what I was telling the coaches today. It's like, I want everyone here 4 times a week. And the reason why is the clients that come 4 times a week and more, I don't think anything above 6, and even 6 might be, like 4 to 5 would probably be the realistic spot. But 4 has always been kind of a sweet spot for me, because it's 4 days on, 3 days off, and you can maybe sprinkle a run or cardio or surfing or something random, pickleball even, to kind of keep you active and keep you moving. 4 times a week is going to be the client that's going to see the best results. They're going to stay the longest because they're seeing the most results. They're going to bring their friends and family and significant others in because they're seeing results, and that's going to help with their accountability. And then you create this awesome community and culture that's based off success and results versus, I've never liked the idea of like, let's have thousands of members that come once or twice a week versus having 200 or 300 members that come 4 or 5 times a week. I'd rather have less clients training more times a week than a lot of clients coming less times a week. I'd rather have a smaller team making more money individually than have twice the size of a team where all of them are making $50K a year, right? Like, I never liked that approach. It's like, let's maximize each individual person's output. So part of the challenge is obviously having this nutrition piece to it. But the one thing that I kind of said to a couple people in person, this is what I want to talk about today, is you have to do enough in the training in the gym to get exactly what you're putting into your body out of it. So if I'm feeding my body a lot of nutrients and I'm feeding my body a lot of protein, I'm obviously getting this huge flood of amino acids. You want to put those nutrients to work, right? And the work is the working out, because you're putting it in through nutrition and you're working it out through an exercise. And when you train and you train to get stronger and you train to get faster, your body is making these progressive overload adaptations that allows you to get better. And that's where you build muscle, you build strength, you build aerobic capacity, you burn fat. Your body doesn't want to look like shit. But if your body wants to look good past a certain state, you have to drive that stimulus to the body. And the more that you can drive that stimulus, the better that adaptation is going to be towards that thing. So a lot of times when people are complaining about they don't like the way they look, you can train to fix that, right? So that's one thing I would say is, like, number one, look at frequency. And then second thing is look at the intention behind it. Your execution of the workouts is always a big part of my conversation, obviously, as a coach. And this is what I do day by day, every single day of my life as far as work goes. Is my job for you is once you get to the gym, that's obviously part of the battle. The second part of the battle is, like, I need to now push you in the gym. And I'll give you an example on just my own personal workouts. I have not made that much progress in the gym performance wise, and I would even say maybe that much aesthetics wise. That being said, I haven't really had a goal, so I guess that makes it more realistic on why I haven't achieved it. I've had more of, like, can I maintain the level of strength and mobility and aesthetics that I have? And for the most part, I've done a decent job. If I wanted to grow, I would need to push myself harder in the gym. If I wanted to grow, I would need more structure in the gym. I would need to know exactly the weights that I did last week, or the type of run, the heart rate or the pace. And, like, I would start tracking more of these variables. I'm currently not in that place right now, but, like, if I really wanted to. And I think most people that join a gym are in a place that they're currently not happy with, and they're trying to get to somewhere that they're not, right? So that requires you being a little bit more methodical and requires you being intentional with the work that you're doing inside of the gym. So I want you guys to understand that there's a certain level of times a week that are going to be able to give you a good kind of return on your investment for what you're doing training-wise. Second thing is, just because you go 4 times a week doesn't mean you're getting great results either. You have to go 4 or 5 times a week as far as your workouts go, and then you actually have to try to progressively overload those week by week. Your body makes adaptations, right? For the worse or for the better, it's going to adapt to whatever you give it. In the beginning week of the challenge, a lot of people are saying that they could not get enough food in. Like, they were so full, they were so satiated, they were eating too much protein, too much fiber. And I've had probably about 3 or 4 conversations this week where people are like, I'm eating the same amount of food, same exact foods, and now I'm actually, like, hungry. So, like, metabolically, their body's kind of turned around a little bit, where they're, like, able to eat these foods and not feel like just kind of this bloated tit the whole time, right? It's like they feel good, and they're metabolically kind of revved up a little bit, and that's exactly what we want. It's a great feeling, right? I mean, obviously, we don't want to do it to a point where you're, like, a victim of your hunger, but, like, feeling that your body's obviously making improvements or change is obviously what drives kind of the progress for motivation, right? So the intention behind it. Second thing, or the next thing I want to talk about, is kind of your split, I guess is probably a better way to say it. When you look at the split as far as, like, how many days a week am I doing strength training, right? How many days a week am I doing cardio? How many days a week am I maybe putting emphasis towards mobility or movement? The more body sculpting kind of goal you have, the older you get, the more important strength training becomes. The more aerobic capacity, caloric burn, perception of a great workout, VO2 max, I think I said cardiovascular health, whatever, then the more kind of aerobic training needs to be the focus. In the perfect world, I think it's always going to be a nice balance between both. Me personally, I like a little bit more strength than I do cardio, right? Cardio kind of comes in 2 elements when you think about aerobic fitness or conditioning stuff. Conditioning can be both aerobic or anaerobic, and I think it's important to blend both. I think it's important to have a bigger foundation of aerobic training, so like the walking, zone 2 runs, bikes, swims, like low level stuff, hiking, rucking. But then it's also important to have some of these like zone 3, 4 kind of workouts, a handful of times. That's something that you would see kind of inside of our workouts. But then it's also important to maybe get past that 90 percentile into that zone 5 work and do more interval type of stuff, right? I think from a mitochondrial standpoint, but also just like a VO2 max perspective, like you want to explore those top end ranges of your actual output as far as anaerobic work goes as well. But it's not something you want to be doing a lot of either. That's something you do maybe a couple times a week. So having a blend between all those things, I think, is kind of the perfect way to look at it. So like when I say 4 or 5 times a week of working out, I'm not just talking about being in the gym. This could be 3 or 4 workouts of strength training and 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 types of runs they're doing, or track workouts, or on the bike, or I'm just giving you guys different examples. You can pick your poison. You want to have a balance between those because you want to A, find things that you enjoy, but B, making sure that when you think about, if I just did strength training and I didn't do aerobic fitness, from a health perspective, there would be a little bit of suffering. Aerobic capacity is actually to be something that's going to benefit your strength training. Also, from a caloric standpoint, like look at most people that are aerobic athletes or endurance athletes. They tend to be obviously a lot lighter and a lot skinnier and very lean. So if that's more of the type of look and or goal that you're trying to strive for, then like obviously doing more of that can be obviously the route that you're looking for, right? So that's something you guys need to reevaluate for yourself, right? I'm just kind of sharing my wisdom and obviously personal exploration just with my own training, but that's always been a big piece. So kind of want to leave it there, is when as far as everything that you guys do for body composition improvements or maximizing your nutrition plan that you have set up for yourself, the most important thing to understand is you are feeding nutrients to your body. And if your goal is to obviously increase the amount of protein that you eat so you can increase the amount of amino acids that are in the body so that you can in return build stronger tissue, aka muscles, if you're doing that without the input of strength training, you're missing a big part of it, right? So obviously having strength training as a strong stimulus for building muscle, obviously having cardio, aerobic, or conditioning type of work to build aerobic capacity, VO2 max, or just burn more calories overall, it makes things easier because the more active you are on the training side, the more flexibility as far as the amount of calories you can take in. Last piece I want to leave you guys with, which I think is the most fundamental piece that I always talk about, is walk more, move more. There's so many people that sit behind a desk for a living because that's just unfortunately the way the modern human has been set up as far as work goes, and you are destroying the potential of what that nutrition and training plan could be benefiting to. So the more that you can have this foundation of movement, the better the strength training and the cardio is obviously going to improve, the better that nutrition plan is going to work, the better you're going to manage stress, the better your sleep is going to improve. I mean, like walking is like one of the easiest things to do in the world that probably has the biggest return on investment, right? So the more that you can kind of keep that as an understanding that should be a fundamental piece, and do it in a playful way, right? Like it doesn't matter if I'm playing fetch with Kona and throwing the ball and sprinting with her, that's movement. Right? Like just get outside and get moving, right? Because those are the things that are going to make the nutrients that you're providing through your body, through your nutrition plan, really benefit. Okay? All right, guys. Well, as always, have a great week and see you next week.